Survival of the fittest suggests a brutal winner-take-all contest. But Charles Darwin noticed an anomaly that kept him awake at night. Nature is full of animals willing to die for each other. Take the honeybee. Thousands of female workers labor their entire lives, abandoning their own chance to reproduce, to gather resources and defend a single queen. Certain songbirds show a similar pattern. When a predator approaches, a bird will often break cover to issue an alarm call, warning the flock but drawing a deadly target on its back. For nearly a century, biologists relied on a concept called group selection. They assumed animals simply acted for the good of the species. Mathematical biologists eventually rejected that logic. In any population of selfless actors, a single selfish mutant who takes the benefits without paying the costs will survive longer and breed more. Over time, the selfish trait will displace the cooperative one. The question of how kindness survives natural selection became one of evolutionary biology's most persistent puzzles. Solving it took 18 years, a bitter academic rivalry, and 3 unconventional thinkers who calculated why it pays to be nice. In the early 1960s, a graduate student named W.D. Hamilton had a profound realization. Evolution doesn't strictly care about the survival of an individual body. It cares about the survival of the genetic code inside it. Because you share 50% of your DNA with your siblings, your genetic lineage can succeed without direct offspring, provided your actions help relatives survive. Hamilton's rule transformed this into a strict mathematical inequality, tipping the scales if the cost is less than the benefit. Hamilton wrote out this dense mathematical proof and submitted it to the Journal of Theoretical Biology. Reviewer John Maynard Smith found the math obscure and requested the paper be split into 2 parts, delaying its release. Before Hamilton's revisions went to print, Maynard Smith published his own brief paper in Nature, summarizing the concept and coining the term, kin selection. Hamilton had established the first mathematical pillar of altruism, but felt his reviewer hijacked his work. It initiated an icy tension that lasted for decades. In 1967, an American computer scientist named George Price arrived in London. He had no formal training in biology. Price happened to read Hamilton's work on kin selection and was deeply unsettled. He hated the implication that familial love was just a calculated genetic strategy. Driven by an intense moral compass, Price set out to mathematically dismantle Hamilton's work and prove that pure goodness could exist in nature. As Price rebuilt the math, he realized that for a trait to increase, it simply needs to be statistically associated with reproductive success. This link, covariance, applies whether helping a brother or a stranger. This equation tracks how a characteristic changes by measuring its covariance with fitness. This mathematical framework allows biologists to track the spread of altruistic traits through every level of life, from individual genes to massive colonies. Price then pivoted. Why do rival animals with lethal weapons, like heavy antlers, engage in ritualized wrestling rather than fighting to the death? In 1970, he drafted a manuscript titled Antlers, Intraspecific Combat, and Altruism. He applied human economic game theory to predict how animals decide to attack, retaliate, or retreat. The journal sent his submission straight to John Maynard Smith for review. Recognizing the brilliant but disorganized insight buried in the text, Maynard Smith reached out to Price directly, and the two began to collaborate. Together, they refined Price's draft into the evolutionarily stable strategy. They proved that populations settle into a balance where unrelated rivals rely on posturing instead of murder to ensure mutual survival. Over 18 years, this relay race of ideas rewrote our understanding of nature. W.D. Hamilton explained the genetic drive to defend our blood relatives. George Price provided the universal equation to measure how those selfless traits survive through generations. And John Maynard Smith laid out the game theory for how unrelated strangers resolve conflicts without destroying each other. Cooperation stands as an optimized strategy for survival, functioning as a vital architecture of the natural world. Cooperation is fundamental to all of life.